are addicted to energy. At night, our cities blaze with light. Our roads are filled with millions of vehicles, while industry toils ceaselessly to produce more and more. 85% of the energy that drives these activities comes from fossil fuels. But they will not last forever, and their end may now be in sight. As fossil fuels dwindle, will the need for a secure source of energy lead nations into conflict? Or can we solve this challenge? Euronews travelled to Norway to speak to Stein Tonnesson, director of the International Peace Research Institute in Oslo. An historian, Dr. Tonnesson, has researched international conflict and its causes for 2 decades. He has made a special study of regional stability in the Middle East and is an expert on Asia. Global energy security is the goal, but can we achieve it peacefully? You've written that global energy security is inseparable from climate change. What did you mean?
Climate change is a global problem, quintessentially global problem. It's something that concerns all of mankind. And this is also the case for energy security, I would argue, primarily for oil security, because oil is a global commodity. It's found in great quantities in some few areas and then is consumed in other big countries that do not have enough of it themselves. So in order to ensure the provision of oil, you have to have a functioning global market. Both are global, and climate change is about energy.
Now, this is why you've called for a new era of global cooperation and diplomacy, because narrow national interests are not sustainable.
Much of what people discuss today when they discuss energy security is national energy security, and that's not constructive. I don't think concern for national energy security is a force for the good, mainly. Because if you think nationally, you think about trying to get oil for your own nation rather than make the market function, and you start to rival for oil. That's not productive. So this is why I argue that we need global action and local action for renewables, but the concern for national energy security must be overcome.
How will this be implemented?
I think that you must implement it in several ways. One first task is to arrive at a new treaty when the Copenhagen summit is being held at the end of 2009. There must be a global treaty where everyone makes some kind of pledge to reduce the emissions level. And then you also need the countries, both there and in other formats, to agree on massive investment schemes.
Let's talk about China from a particular interest, sphere of interest of yours. China, in fact, has recently proposed that the West pay for its carbon emissions produced when they manufacture goods for the West. It seems absurd, doesn't it? But you're saying that it's not.
I don't think it's absurd at all that China demands that the West should pay, but the payment should be made in a way that makes it possible to produce it in a different way, that won't lead to so much emissions. It should not just be a tax on the import. It should be money that is pooled into China to generate technological change. And that's why China must open itself up to massive cooperation with Japan, the EU, the United States, for such schemes.
The path to global energy security, is it a rocky one?
The road to global energy security could indeed be rocky, because we know that oil is located mainly in areas with little political stability. And we know also that China is coming up as the new great power and approaching the level of power of the United States. So if they start to compete for the oil from the Gulf region, for instance, that could be extremely rocky indeed. Another possibility, which is more immediately at hand, and which I actually fear very much, is that the Copenhagen summit this December will not succeed, so that China and the United States and the EU, Japan, don't agree on a workable treaty. And in that case, it's quite likely that the United States, perhaps the EU as well, will start to impose customs duties on products from countries that have high emissions. So instead of paying China for this as China wants, one will start to impose customs. And that will be protectionism. it will lead to a destruction of the global trading system, and it will lead to enormous resentment in China and in other exporting countries, so that can envenomate the international climate and then lead perhaps eventually to armed conflict and war. But I want to be an optimist, so I think that if we can just manage to have sufficient stability in the oil-producing regions and see approximately when the oil reaches its peak, then we will also have market forces stimulated by government action that bring in other energy sources. They must happen quickly if we are to prevent the global climate from heating up much further.